Sunday dinners at my parents' house used to feel like obligations wrapped in pot roast. The table was always set too perfectly, the napkins folded into stiff triangles, and the air thick with old traditions no one really believed in anymore. Marley, of course, took her seat right beside Dad, like always. She laughed loudest, poured wine like it was her house, and spoke in a way that demanded attention, chirpy, polished, always a little too rehearsed. I sat at the far end, near the kitchen, where no one really looked. I didn't come for the food. I came because they expected me to. After my divorce, I'd moved back home, not forever, just until I figured things out. That's what I told myself. But just until had turned into 8 months of moving quietly, folding laundry that wasn't mine, and pretending I didn't hear the whispers when I walked into a room too fast. That night, the roast smelled like rosemary and resignation. I passed the potatoes, smiled on cue. It was just another Sunday. Until it wasn't. I never expected this dinner to be the last I'd attend as a daughter. Mom set down her fork halfway through the meal and cleared her throat, the sound of something rehearsed. Dad followed with, "We've made a family decision." I stiffened, but said nothing. Marley's having her college friends over next week. 15 of them. Can you believe it? Mom's voice was chipper, like this was a milestone worth toasting. Then came the blow. We thought, just for the week, maybe you could move your things into the living room. Or figure out something else, maybe an Airbnb. It's only temporary. I looked at them, searching for some flicker of understanding. Nothing. They were already moving on. Marley giggled. It'll be like camping. You could even stay by the beach, take a little vacation. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were gleaming. I didn't speak. Because if I did, I might not stop. This wasn't a suggestion. The room buzzed with everyone else's approval, smiles, nods, refills of wine like nothing had been said. My opinion hadn't been requested, let alone considered. I sat there, still, listening as they discussed which air mattresses Marley's friends could use. No one asked what I'd need. I felt the old familiar ache rising, like that time in high school when they used my college fund to pay for Marley's art school tuition. Just a week, they'd said then, too. Just a little help. I stood up. Quietly. No dramatic gestures. I placed my napkin on the table, excused myself like I had something in the oven. No one stopped me. No one even looked. Upstairs, I entered the guest room, the room that wasn't mine but had been my shelter for the past few months. I opened the closet and saw my suitcase tucked in the corner, still tagged from when I'd moved in. I sat on the edge of the bed. For a moment, I waited for the wave of anger. But it didn't come. What came instead was a strange kind of clarity. I stood. Pulled the suitcase out. Unzipped it. Began to pack. Maybe they thought they'd humiliated me. Maybe they didn't think at all. But what they had given me was something more valuable than space. They had shown me, without hesitation, exactly where I stood in their world. I opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand, my drawer, the only one I'd claimed in this house. Inside, nestled between old receipts and a broken watch, were the keys. Small, silver, worn smooth at the edges. They unlocked a different life. After the divorce, I didn't waste my settlement on shoes or spa days. I bought a rundown coastal property 2 hours away and spent weekends restoring it. No one in this house knew. I didn't tell them, because I knew they wouldn't understand. And honestly, I didn't want them to. I zipped the suitcase closed. Downstairs, laughter still echoed. Someone clinked a glass. Probably Marley. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't slam the door or make a scene. Just walked out the front door, rolled my suitcase down the walkway, and placed it in the trunk. The sky was deep blue, fading into night. Cool air brushed my skin. I slid into the driver's seat and sat there for a second, hands on the wheel, staring at the porch light that had once meant home. Let them enjoy their guests. I'm done being furniture in their lives. I drove through the fog, headlights cutting pale tunnels through the morning mist that hung low over Highway 1. The road curved along the cliffs like it had been carved just for moments like this, moments when a woman leaves everything behind without so much as a note. My phone sat face down in the cup holder. No buzzes, no missed calls, no apologies. Just silence. The same silence I'd gotten used to in that house. The ocean loomed to my left, dark and restless. Pines blurred past on the right. It should have felt like freedom, but my chest was tight. Not with regret, just the weight of knowing I was done trying to earn space in a life they never meant to share. They'd probably wake up to find my room empty and say, she could have at least said something. But I had. Just not in the language they listened to. My absence was my goodbye. The villa wasn't much, just 2 bedrooms and a deck, but it was mine. I bought it after the divorce with what little I got in the settlement. No one knew. I kept it quiet because I needed something untouched by their opinions, their noise, their judgment. It had taken me nearly a year to gut it, paint it, fix every creak and crack with my own hands. At the time, I didn't even know how to use a sander. But YouTube taught me. And stubbornness carried the rest. I turned off onto the gravel driveway. The eucalyptus trees swayed gently as if nodding at my return. I parked beside the side porch and just sat for a minute, listening to the stillness. Unlocking the front door felt like breathing for the first time in weeks. The air inside smelled faintly of cedar and lemon oil. I hadn't been here in over a month, but it still felt like stepping into myself. The walls were white, the floors worn oak, the kitchen open to the living space I'd designed without anyone else's opinion. I walked through slowly, brushing my hand along the countertop I'd sealed myself. In the living room, the old armchair I'd reupholstered faced the ocean. No clutter. No footsteps behind me. Just me. In the guest room, I unpacked a few clothes and a toothbrush. That's all I needed. I left the framed family photos I'd once felt guilty packing. They belonged to a version of me that kept hoping. I wasn't that woman anymore. Coffee tasted different here. Sitting on the deck with the mug warm in my hand, I stared at the Pacific. It didn't welcome or reject, it just existed, vast and unapologetic. I envied that. I didn't know what I was building, exactly. But I finally knew who was doing the building. Me. No committee. No permission. Just me. Inside, I hung the small framed quote I'd brought from the other house. It read, "You teach people how to treat you, by what you tolerate." I'd seen it online years ago, scrolled past it a dozen times before it finally stuck. It became a mirror. Today, it felt like a flag. Marley's friends would be arriving soon. 15 of them. I wondered if anyone noticed my absence, or if the wine was flowing too freely to care. Didn't matter. This silence, this space, was louder than any argument I could have had at that table. Then, the phone buzzed. A name popped up I hadn't seen in years, Julia. We'd been close in college, lost touch after life happened. Her message was short, "Hey. Saw your sister's post. You okay?" My stomach turned. I hadn't posted anything. But of course Marley had. Probably some curated group photo captioned, "Family Week." So grateful, with no trace of me. It wasn't being replaced that stung, it was being erased. I opened the text reply screen, typed out 3 different responses. Deleted each one. What was the point? They'd already decided the story. I opened my laptop instead. For a while, I just stared at the blank screen. The cursor blinked, patient. Then a thought formed, simple, steady, they've told their version. Maybe it's time I tell mine. I closed the laptop gently. Stood. Walked to the small study I'd set up in the sunroom. Pulled down an old folder from the shelf. On the front, in neat, inked letters, legal options, trust and property. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't planning revenge. I was simply reclaiming what they never thought I'd use. They wanted space? I'd give them all the distance they deserve. The following afternoon, I cleared the small table in the villa's study and spread out the documents I'd brought with me. Trust papers. Property deeds. Copies of letters I never sent. I'd kept all of it tucked away in a single folder, waiting for the day I might need to protect myself. I didn't expect it to be now. But I wasn't surprised either. Their behavior at that dinner hadn't come out of nowhere, it had been building for years. This was just the first time I refused to swallow it. 6 months ago, I sat across from a quiet estate attorney in Monterey. She never asked why I wanted the title changes done privately, she only asked, "Are you sure you want this separate from your family?" I had nodded. I need one thing in this life that belongs only to me. And she processed every document without judgment. That was the day I stopped hoping for fairness. I started preparing for impact instead. I checked the county records on my laptop. No filings from them. Not yet. They still believed everything was as it had always been, my name attached, but my voice irrelevant. They had no idea the house they thought they controlled had already slipped from their fingers. I began drafting a notification letter, the type that carried no anger, only finality. Just because I chose silence didn't mean I surrendered ownership. I was done playing the obedient daughter they could shuffle room to room like a piece of furniture. This wasn't about distance. It was severance. As the sun moved higher over the coastline, I found an old notebook in the drawer of the desk. Inside, I discovered a single line I'd written years ago during one of my darker stretches: "You can't bloom where the soil keeps rejecting your roots." I sat with that for a moment. Back then, I wrote it as a wounded plea. Today, it read like a verdict. I stopped needing them to love me. That was the shift. My phone rang. I didn't rush to it. I let it ring until voicemail caught it. Marley. Her voice played through the speaker, light, sweet, casual. "Just checking in. The girls loved your room, by the way. They said it felt like a little retreat. Hope you're good." I stared at the phone long after the message ended. My room. My bed. My space. She said it like she was thanking me for a favor. The audacity settled in my chest like a stone. They weren't sorry. They'd turned my absence into convenience. That was the moment I felt something shift again, not grief, not even fury. Just certainty. If I ever went back, it wouldn't be as their daughter. I opened a blank page on my legal pad and wrote at the top, "My home was never yours." It wasn't a letter. It was the beginning. I reached for my laptop again and logged into my legal portal. I sent a message to the estate lawyer: "Prepare a cease and desist for unauthorized occupancy of personal property." It felt surreal, writing that about my own family. But then I reminded myself, family doesn't stake tents in your dignity. I reviewed every account I held, changed passwords, listed assets, secured backups. No more weak spots. Not for sentiment. Not for habit. I didn't take to social media. I wouldn't give them a spectacle. I preferred the power of absence to the noise of accusation. But I did one thing. I called Mrs. Hammond, the neighbor who had watched me grow up, and asked her to check if any vehicles showed up in the driveway at home. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "I always knew you were the strong one." Evening shadows lengthened across the walls when I stepped outside for air. The ocean was steel gray, unbothered. I was no longer interested in approval. Only in reclaiming what I'd handed away for free. When I returned inside, a slim envelope waited on the entry table, forwarded mail. I tore it open without thinking. It was from my father's attorney. I read the first line twice. They weren't just angry. They were preparing to challenge my ownership. Late afternoon came with nothing but ocean wind and silence. I sat by the open window, the light fading golden across the deck, listening to the soft hush of waves below. No notifications, no footsteps, no voices calling my name. It should have been peaceful. Instead, it felt like standing in the eye of something that hadn't touched down yet. I found myself staring at my phone again, knowing full well she wouldn't call. She never did when it counted. My mother had a way of disappearing without leaving the room. I used to think it was shyness or confusion. Now I saw it clearly for what it was: refusal. Refusal to see what she didn't want to confront. I remembered a day, years ago, when I was moving out of my college apartment. Boxes stacked higher than I could carry. My arms shaking. She watched from the car. Didn't open the door, didn't ask if I needed help. Just sat there, like it wasn't hers to get involved. The knock at the door was light. The kind of knock that meant something was being sent, not someone was arriving. I opened it and found a small box on the step. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Inside was a framed photo. Our family, standing in front of the old house. Smiling. Except my face had been cropped out. A clean, deliberate snip. Like I'd never been there at all. It knocked the air out of me more than any shouting ever could. Beneath the frame, a folded note in my father's sharp block letters: "We need to talk. In person." That was all. I walked the photo over to the kitchen counter and set it face down. They were still trying to control the terms, the timing. I wasn't playing that game anymore. I opened my laptop and started typing. A letter, not long, not dramatic. Direct. I wrote what I needed to say, what I'd never had the nerve to voice. That their choices had consequences. That they had 48 hours to respond, clearly and respectfully, or I would proceed without them. I caught myself watering it down halfway through. Backspaced. Rewrote. This is not about being heard anymore. This is about being respected. I signed it with my full name. Not the nickname they used to call me. That name didn't fit anymore. The phone rang just as I hit save. I didn't recognize the number, but something in me knew. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice was soft, even. "Is everything okay?" I waited. Then, quietly but firmly, "No. It's not." There was a long silence. Then she said, "I didn't know how to fight for you when you were younger." I stared at the floor, felt that old ache rising, pressing into my chest. I needed you then. And I need you now, but that has to change. I won't keep needing what isn't there. I'll think about what you said. That's all she offered. Not a promise. Just maybe. After we hung up, I walked outside. The ocean hadn't moved. The wind didn't care what kind of call I'd just taken. I recorded a voice memo, my own kind of journal. If they can't see me, they don't deserve me. Back inside, I pulled out the photo again. I flipped it over and stared at the empty space where I used to be. That night, I planned to send it back. With a new crop. Only my face left in the frame. I wasn't being petty. I was being precise. I reviewed my legal options again. I didn't need permission anymore to act. I just needed to stay sharp. Dinner was simple, just a bowl of soup, a slice of toast, and a chair on the deck facing the darkening sky. I'd just taken my last bite when I heard it. Gravel under tires. A slow roll up the drive. Then headlights flared across the front yard, growing wider. I stood. Someone was here. And it wasn't a friend. I sat in the study as distant wheels crunched gravel. I knew it wasn't the mailman. My pulse thudded. Through the window, I saw Marley step out of a black SUV, flanked by two young women who dragged bags behind them. She walked straight to the side door, didn't knock. She pulled a key from her jacket and clicked it in. The door swung open like she owned the place. My throat tightened. I slipped into the hallway, heart silent but mind screaming. They carried in wine bottles, snacks, suitcases. Laughter echoed as if this villa, my refuge, was just another gathering spot. Marley said aloud, "She won't mind, she owes us for all those years staying in our parents' home." One voice asked, "Hey, I thought she moved." Why would she care? Their words hung in the air sharp and cold. I watched every gesture. The casual way one friend placed a dish on the counter. The other slid a suitcase into the guest room. No hesitation. No respect. I realized this wasn't ignorance, it was strategy. I raised my phone slightly, hit the record button, voice quiet. Let them prove it. I crept closer to the doorway, pressed my ear to the frame, listening. Come on, she knows, Marley laughed. Her friend added, it's like she's not even in the picture anymore. They laughed again, as if erasure were a punchline. My chest constricted. I stepped forward, pulling the recorder louder. Then I emerged. The sudden quiet startled them. I didn't realize trespassing came with a bottle of wine. My voice was soft but one word heavier, wine, hung in the room. Marley smirked. We were just being friendly. Her tone dipped with feigned innocence. She held a wine glass. You wouldn't want us ruining your place, would you? I dropped the phone onto the dining table. It clicked on. The red recording light glowed. There's 10 minutes to leave, I said. Or I call the police and help you pack. I held my ground. No shaking. No hissed threats. Just this room, the record light, their faces. Silence. Then Marley scoffed and made a move. The friends began gathering their things, tossing bags together. You've really changed, Marley spat over her shoulder as she left. I watched them go, the doors clicking, footsteps fading. I inhaled, held it. No, I said. I just stopped apologizing. I walked every room. Checked corners. Found a spare key drawer, empty. Someone had lifted my contingency. That stung. I rewired every lock that night. Worked past midnight. My fingers bruised, my eyes raw. When morning came, a courier handed me a sealed envelope from their lawyer. I didn't open it yet. I stood and watched the sun rise, felt every broken idea of family dissolve. They didn't just trespass in my home. They declared war over something they never built. I didn't even need the alarm. My eyes were already open before the sun fully crested. I felt it in my chest, that familiar churn of dread before a storm breaks. The email had landed just after midnight, timestamped 12:03 a.m. Emergency court hearing. Filed by my father. Coffee didn't help. I stood out on the deck with the mug warming my hands, watching the sea roll in and out like it didn't care whose name was on the deed. I opened the filing again on my phone. The language was bold, aggressive, challenging the validity of title transfer. Seeking immediate injunction. Improper concealment. They were painting me as a thief. But the part that tightened my jaw wasn't the wording, it was the fact that I knew they'd do this. That's why, 6 months ago, I'd driven 2 towns over to meet a man named Cyrus Brandt and quietly moved the villa into a living trust under my name. No announcements. No arguments. Just paperwork. I spoke the lines I'd been practicing into the air. You don't get to steal what was never yours. I bought this place. I bled for this peace. Then I made the call. Cyrus answered on the second ring. I've seen it, he said flatly. They're pushing for an emergency hearing to lock up the title. You're on a 72-hour countdown. Good, I replied. Then we fight. He walked me through our response. The ownership trail was airtight. The transfer had followed every legal protocol, signed, notarized, and filed. They had no ground, just noise and family reputation. But it wasn't enough to win in court. We had to control the story too. I told Cyrus to prepare a press summary. People need to know I didn't just show up with a suitcase and a sob story. That afternoon, I sat at the breakfast table with my laptop and started drafting a video script. I bought this home with my sweat, not my silence. If my name makes people uncomfortable, maybe they should ask why. Hours later, I stood outside the family house with legal papers in hand. I hadn't seen my father in person since that airport stunt with my son. He opened the door, his face a hard wall, like he was ready to win a prize fight. Del and Silas were already inside, lounging like it was just another brunch. I'm not here for tea, I said. You filed a lie. Here's my answer. I set the documents on the table. You have 24 hours to withdraw the petition, or I file for abuse of process and full legal costs. Marley tried to interject, something about miscommunication, misunderstanding, missing context. My mother looked like she wanted to say something but settled on tears instead. I didn't move. You made your choices, I said, voice steady. So did I. Only mine were legal. They didn't stop me as I walked out. By nightfall, Cyrus had released our statement. It included redacted copies of the title, proof of purchase, and, at my direction, clips of audio from the villa trespass. The response was immediate. My phone lit up. Old neighbors. Colleagues. Even Eudora McQuaid sent a text, told my bridge group you were too smart for them. Proud of you. News outlets picked it up. The headline spread fast. Daughter legally transferred ownership months ago. Parents caught off guard. By midnight, I sat back at the villa, watching a local news clip on loop. Del's publicist was scrambling. One sponsor already pulled her image from an ad campaign. For the first time in years, I saw public sympathy tilt toward me. Then I heard sirens. Faint, but unmistakable. I turned the volume down. A news ticker ran across the screen. Reporters were showing up at my parents' house now. I leaned back, closed my laptop, and stared into the dark. This wasn't just about property. It was about presence, proof, power. And finally, I felt like I owned my name. The envelope was still on the kitchen counter, unopened. The court order had arrived late last night, but the bigger surprise came this morning, a pastel invitation to a community fundraiser hosted by my parents. It was billed as a family gala. A celebration. Apparently, all sins are forgiven when there's a catering budget and a camera crew. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't owe them anything, but part of me needed to be there. Not for them. For me. I dressed in navy. Subtle, sharp. Neutral enough not to provoke but strong enough not to disappear. I drove alone. The parking lot was already full when I arrived. Banners flapped in the coastal wind, printed with Dell's face and slogans about community vision and building legacies. Not one mention of the villa. Or me. Inside, it was all applause and curated smiles. A few heads turned as I stepped in, but no one greeted me. The spotlight was fixed on Dell and Silas, who stood at the center of it all, like elected royalty. Cameras clicked. A local reporter introduced Dell as the architect of this inspiring afternoon. I caught that phrase. Let it simmer. She gave a speech. Polished. Performed. I want to thank those who stood by me, who helped make this place a home for everyone. Family, friends, and especially my husband, Silas. She glanced briefly toward a row of chairs. One had a folded name card. Mine. Still sealed. Still blank. From the back of the room, I watched heads nod. I saw Marley's friends whisper, one of them pointing and asking, "Doesn't she ever show up?" I stood. The murmur softened. The lights didn't follow me, but the silence did. I walked slowly, steadily, down the aisle and up the side steps to the stage. Dell turned toward me, already bracing. I didn't ask permission. I placed a folder on the podium. Documents. Photos. Emails. Deed records. You talk about building, I said, but you forgot who laid the foundation. Dell opened her mouth but no words came out. Silas shifted. The crowd was frozen. This isn't about stealing the spotlight. It's about correcting the story. I bought that home. I fought for it when no one else would. And I won, not because I shouted louder, but because I told the truth. I didn't yell. I didn't have to. Truth carries its own volume. I stepped back. The room stayed silent long after I left the stage. Outside, the sun was starting to lower behind the hills. A reporter caught up with me near the exit. "Do you have a comment, Ms. Layton?" "Yeah," I said, tucking the folder under my arm. I chose truth over silence. That's all. Dell caught up to me just before I reached my car. Her face was pale, her voice low. "I didn't expect you to come. That was the point." She sighed. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." I looked her square in the eye. "You don't get to shape the story now. You told yours. I just told mine." When I got back to the villa, my phone was blowing up. Clips of the moment on stage were already circulating. Some applauded. Some speculated. Some were stunned that I'd even shown up. I sat on the porch, watching the tide come in. The quiet felt earned this time. Just after 10 p.m., my phone lit up again. A sealed court order had been delivered to my legal app. From the judge. Effective immediately, Del and Silas were barred from entering the property until further review. I set the phone down. Poured myself a glass of water. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself smile. They tried to claim my home in public. Now the law won't even let them step inside it. The glare of camera flashes still lingered behind my eyelids. I could still feel the hush of the crowd as I stepped off stage, a silence louder than any applause. Every detail of that moment replayed in my mind. The way Del's face went slack. The way the room went cold. The sound of the paper folder thumping onto the podium. Then the world turned. By early evening, a sponsored post appeared online, a photograph of my mother hugging Del in full view of the gala crowd. The caption read, "Family love preserved." It was everywhere, shared, commented, retweeted. The image framed me as absent, irrelevant, invisible in their narrative. I scrolled through news sites. The photo featured on at least 6 local outlets. Del's PR quickly spun it as a reconciliation, heartwarming, symbolic, unity regained. It looked deceptively voluntary, as though I had stepped out of frame willingly. My heart twisted. They erased me with images while they spoke of unity. I called Quinn. She answered, voice steady. Then Cyrus joined, a 3-way call in real time. We developed a counter-strike. We'd take that same hug photo, crop out Del, and present a version of truth. We'd send it to local press alongside my own caption, "This is the version they want you to see. Here's the version I lived." Then, choose who they hug, but never choose who you are. Editing began immediately. I selected a version with myself and mother only, the space between her and Del cut out. That new image, alongside evidence of my ownership, my work on the villa, and records of trespass, would set the record straight. Within minutes, the cropped version went live on my social handles. Within an hour, it was posted on the same pages that ran the original. Comments flooded in. Some said, "Finally she shows her face." Others sneered, "Why drag family into it?" Del's PR fired back, labeling my post petty and attention-seeking. They tried to paint me as the antagonist for daring to correct their story. I took screenshots of every nasty reply. Each one documented. Each one fuel for the next step. Then I watched Del's response video. Soft voice, tears in her eyes, "I never meant to hurt you. I thought this was for us, family healing." She tried to shape her words into apology, but her eyes glanced toward my photo instead of me. It was cruel, intentional. I did not engage publicly. Silence would speak louder. Instead, I forwarded my cropped photo and article to local newsrooms labeled correction. I reached out to Eudora McQuaid and neighbors with stories of me quietly helping years before I was publicly visible. I drafted my own gala speech, not to share in person, but as a downloadable PDF, truth unfiltered. This wasn't reputation control anymore. It was redemption. That night, I listened to the ocean while my phone buzzed nonstop. My cropped image sat side by side with the original hug photo on the news homepage. Side by side, viewers could see what was made and what was erased. They tried to frame me out of every frame, I whispered to the wind. But tonight I made sure I'm the one they can't crop out. That final week at the villa, I woke before the sun. Just me, the shoreline, and a sky too soft to hurt. The waves didn't ask questions. The wind didn't argue. My phone buzzed beside my coffee, more messages. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years sent an apology. Another one called me selfish. I stared at the screen, but their words didn't land. They sounded like echoes from a play I wasn't part of anymore. I used to believe victory meant winning. Winning court cases. Winning arguments. Now I realized it meant walking away without needing to explain. I'd already won when I chose not to become like them. Silence used to feel like shame. Now, it felt like power. I wrote in my journal, "You don't have to return to the fire to prove you survived it." That line stayed with me, circled in black ink. One afternoon, I heard a knock at the villa gate. My mother. No Delaware. No father. Just her, holding her purse like it weighed 100 pounds. She didn't ask to come in. She just stood there until I opened the gate and let her sit on the porch. "I didn't know how to love both of you," she said, looking past me. "I thought I'd lose one if I loved the other." I didn't rescue her. I let the guilt hang there, right between us. She reached out for the old pattern, me comforting her, but I didn't reach back. "You don't have to choose anymore," I said. I already walked away. She nodded, slowly. "Will you ever come home?" "I have a home." That was my answer. She left before sunset. No hugs. No promises. Just clarity. And for once, that was enough. Later that week, I met with Cyrus in town. Over coffee, I told him I wanted out, no damages, no further court filings. If I keep fighting, I'm still tied to them. I don't want their house. I have my own. We finalized the paperwork. I severed every legal and financial string that still connected me to them. No more hearings. No more headlines. The media moved on quickly, without scandal. There was nothing left for them to chew. At the villa, I felt a quiet I hadn't known before. Not loneliness, just stillness. I looked out toward the sea and remembered something I read once: sometimes your power is in all the things you walk away from. Then came a new beginning. I filed the documents to convert the villa into a retreat space for women like me. Women untethering from families that used love like a leash. Within days, the first inquiry arrived. A single mother with 2 daughters. She wrote, "I just need 3 nights of peace." I hung a framed quote in the entryway, not estranged. Evolved. It felt right. I didn't shut the door to the past, I just stopped inviting it inside. Near the front steps, I placed Evan's red backpack. Not hidden. Not polished. Just there. A quiet symbol of what broke, and what built me. I whispered, "We broke the cycle. That's enough." As the sun dropped low over the water, I sat on the balcony, pen in hand, finishing the last page of my memoir. This wasn't a story about betrayal anymore. It was about resurrection. I used to think I needed them to see me. I only needed me to stay. Then, a knock. I looked toward the gate. Someone new stood there, lost, unsure. And as I opened the door, I realized I wasn't telling the story anymore. I was becoming someone else's proof that survival is possible.